Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. I'm rocking my pants, putting suckers in fear, making the tears rain down like a monsoon. Listen to the bass go boom, explosion. Overpowering over the competition. I'm towering, wrecking shop. When I drop these lyrics that'll make you
1. Hey everybody, and welcome to a new little video series from the Punchmans Report. We're going to call this the Punching Annex, and the general idea is we're going to be talking with coaches from Rel 1 and asking them kind of, how they got there, and any advice that they have. Maybe this is going to be a little bit more geared towards newer players, and just, providing advice on, how to see success in Rebel and Rel in general, but also how to kind of work your team up to the upper divisions. With me, as always, is Jimmy.
Hey there, folks.
And today we have our special guest, Mystaes.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and your team?
So I'm Mystaes. I'm a Rel 1 coach, and I play the Knights Who Said Knee. We're a Bretonian team. We've been in the Rel 1 now since I think season 3, maybe season 4. This is our 5th season. I know that for sure.
And that's 5th season altogether, or 5th season in Rel 1?
Yeah, no, this is both. So what happened when I joined was I joined the second game into the season, and this was before they stopped dropping people freshly into the top flight. So that was where there was room, and I really wanted to play Lizards, but there was already 4 Lizards in Rel 1. So I figured, screw it, I'm going into Rel 1, I'm going to get destroyed, I'll just roll a Bretonian team and I'll play them, and I've been playing them up here ever since. They still somehow haven't managed to get rid of me, but they might this season, because it's looking like we're going to re-roll.
That's awesome.
So how long have you been playing Blood Bowl?
That's a bit of an odd question. I played back 4 or 5 years ago in high school. I'd play like some games in Fumble, like a few hundred games. But I really stopped playing when I went away to university. But I just finished my undergrad last year, and I was bored over the summer. I literally had nothing to do. And I saw Blood Bowl 2, and one of my friends was playing, and I decided to pick it up, and that's how I got back into the game. And damn, was I rusty.
No, I'm rusty. So, in terms of, since obviously it sounds like you kind of picked the Bretons as a gag and you've been running with them, but what would you say your favorite team, or even like your play style in Blood Bowl would be?
It's hard. I tend to like balanced teams that can do a little bit of everything, because I enjoy killing things. I enjoy the shenanigans. One of the teams that I think is my favorite overall is probably Norse. They're one of the teams that I played almost exclusively back when I was playing Fumble, and something about being able to just go all out with all the frenzy and all the mighty blow was just great. And you always, if you had bad development, it was fine, because you always just cycle a new player. I'm hesitant to bring them into the Rel itself, because Norse AV7 team that's dependent on brawling has a lot of same problems as Bretonians do, whereas they're going to end up losing that brawl at higher TV just because of what their AV is, and they don't have access to claw, and their agility isn't what I'm looking for when I obviously move on to my next team.
Yeah, I've always had a pretty hard time with them myself. I played them in a small little one-season league before, and actually had reasonable success once they got going. But I think Jimmy is far more in the school of Norse, because he's a big surfer.
Yeah, and Norse was probably my second team, and I played them for a long time. When I started, I really bought into surfing and really sold myself on trying to figure out how to use them. But that was a couple years ago.
Yeah, no, I think they definitely work. I feel as in BB2, they're like elves. I think they suffer from the banking rule, because they're always going to have to replace players, and the inability to actually have a stored up bank of money really hurts the teams that have to cycle players a lot.
Yeah. So if you're just starting out as a fresh coach in a Rebel format, what kind of advice would you have for making a deep run into the upper divisions?
Making a deep run into the upper divisions, the first thing I'm going to tell any of the new coaches is you need to have tackle. That's the one thing that
Yeah.
we in the Rel 1 in the higher divisions notice routinely when we're about to play your teams for playoffs or playing them in the off season is that there's just a lack of tackle, and there's a lack of skills outside of maybe Mighty Blow and kill skills that players in Rel 1 find stable for their teams. For example, Sace and his Chaos team, he has a ton of gores with Wrestle, and that's just to bring down ball carriers and just gives you more options to work with on the pitch.
Yeah, Jimmy, hear that?
So like building your team properly is probably the most important thing. It's not all about the Mighty Blow. It's not all about killing the other team. You have to be able to control agility teams. You have to be able to if you're gonna make a playoff run, you have to be able to beat out every kind of team. And so tailoring your team one way, you're gonna obviously lose games against the way it's not tailored for.
And you got to be able to skink hunt, which I think is key to beating. I mean, not just
absolutely.
skinks, but anything like it. You know, elves or any dodgy team without an adequate amount of tackle. I find that you're just at a huge strategic disadvantage because you can't reliably put hits on them and you can't keep them from getting away from you.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing that I think that new players anyways need to understand is that it's not always about just winning the game, because I know that they can get into that trap. Team development is really important, and sometimes sometimes it's beneficial to take the risk to level someone up rather than going several games before they finally get their level, because the more you level up your team, obviously the more competitive it's going to be and the better you'll be overall.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And
So
then that's why you'll see Lizardmen coaches handing off the ball to a Saurus, right? Because that's the only reliable way to level them up early. They're not going to get those casualties. And for example, Lizards, before they have block on all their Saurus, are not that strong of a team because 1 and 9s kill them.
yeah, it's Jimmy and I've talked a good bit about how kind of rough it is to get lizard teams off the ground. We've got a couple in the divisions that we cover, and getting those sources to those, at least to block in those initial levels or break tackle or something like that. It's real easy to just get tied up while people run around killing your skinks.
Yeah, it's real easy to bloat your skinks, and your sources are just sitting there with 1 or 2 of them have block, and the rest of them are just 0 of 6.
Yeah. So next question would be what approach did you take with this team with the Bretts? What approach did you take to building them, and what would you have changed with that approach, if anything, with the kind of the benefit of hindsight, or if you could go back and do it again?
Well, interesting story. When I first started playing Bretts, it was before the Bretonians had the agility access on their blitzers, and it was a nightmare. So thank God they finally got that. For my Bretts, it's basically like any Brett team. If a peasant levels and I have too many DP and he doesn't get guard, he's fired. It's very important for players to realize that, well, coaches realize that some players need to be cycled. A bloaty, like a team with a bunch of block peasants isn't going to do me any good. They're AV7 and basically they exist to die for my other pieces. In fact, I've had countless peasants die on me now, and I don't remember a single one of their names, but that's besides the point. For my blockers, I like to have guard. The benefit of hindsight being that the one thing that infuriates me with Bretonians now, which didn't exactly get on my nerves when I began playing them, is having to have wrestle on your guard pieces, because of course your wrestlers are the only ones with strength access.
Oh, right.
And so the Bretonians are interesting because they have all this wrestle to start, but then it's on their only strength pieces. So the main problem I've seen with them now is that just it's suboptimal. For example, I used to have a killer, Rolf the Slayer, who was a Mighty Blow, Pylon, Tackle, Pro. He was level 6 blocker, but like he was not as efficient as other killers because he had wrestle, which of course eliminates half your options. One of the things I would like to have done is actually with my knights. I would like to experiment more with the rugby style of Bretonians, which is when essentially you have for example, Godfrey the Jackal, he's a Nerves of Steel, Agility 4, dump off player, and it makes my team really hard to sack. But sometimes Godfrey can't do it alone, and I'd be really interested to see how a Brett team would function with multiple blitzers who were capable of tossing the ball around as a response to actually getting blitzed.
Maybe even put dump off pass on them if you roll into pass, because they come with passing skills, right?
Yeah, no, they come with passing skills. Only strength skills are doubles for them.
Nice.
Yeah, I've had quite a few agility up blitzers in the day. I used to have a blitzer called Gelfried the Gallant, the first of his name, who could throw a long bomb on a 2+ because he was an agility 5 strong arm accurate player. But he didn't last very long. Piled in the 5th game since he got his agi up. Knocked him down for the first time in the game. He was KO'd. He piled on the KO, dead into dead. And I'll never forgive Own for that. As for what I regret specifically about the build of this team, the current thing that I regret is the Agility 5 on Dante the Daring. Because despite his name, he usually fails at every daring act I try.
Well, 5 agility, I guess you should be trying a lot of daring things.
Oh yeah, well, for example, there'll be like a loose cage on the sideline, and I'll go to surf somebody. It's just a 3-up, and I've got to reroll. He'll fail the 1 and 9 to get in, and it'll make me sad because this is the whole reason I paid extra TV for him. But that's Blood Bowl, right? It's decided by the dice.
That's Blood Bowl. You got one more question for us there, Jimmy?
Yep. So I know you were talking about this a little bit earlier, but when do you know it's time to reroll a team from Div 1? Or what would have to happen to make you consider rerolling your team?
Well, for me, the plan to reroll is more or less because I'm getting burnt out of the Agility 3 mixed teams. More or less just burnt out on Brett's in general. I've played them for 5 seasons now. I think it's about time that I get to try something else.
It's enough.
I think that's good to try a change up the game plan every once in a while. As for when people normally re-roll out of Div 1, it usually happens because their team is in a body bag.
And that does happen quite a bit up in Div 1, at least for those of us who are casual observers.
Yeah. For example, Mike, Eisenmike, I don't know how he's still here because consistently along with my team, his team will just implode on a seasonally basis at least twice. And then he'll be stuck there with like 3 Saurus for a game and then have to rebuild from like 3 leveled Saurus and like 1 leveled Skink. And he does it every time. It's really fun to watch.
Yeah, he had a real rough year last year.
Oh, yeah. Last year was definitely one of the worst ones yet. Actually, he can't claim to have got the worst of it, though, because I remember Soul finished the season with like 1 Norse player left. No, not even kidding. Soul lost like half his team to Dark Elves. Not Dark Elves, to Wood Elves. I think he took 4 perms against, I think it was Swark. It might have been slightly bent, though.
And he was already hurt up before that even happened. He was already rocking a bunch of loners.
He was doing okay. He took those 4 perms, and he played the next game with Sace, and his season was just never the same.
All you had to say was Sace.
I don't know. Whenever I play Sace, his claws don't seem to hurt anything, so it's not that bad.
Word. Well, hey, thank you again for coming on. It's really good opportunity, especially for our younger coaches. And there's been a real big growth in Rel, but Rebel as a whole. And so it's a great opportunity to kind of get these new coaches into the spirit and understand like what they got to do to be one of the best, like the Knights Who Say Knee.
Oh, I don't know why you're talking to us. We're at the bottom of Rel 1 for now.
Hey, you made it up there, though. That's the dream.
It is the dream.
Well, thank you again for coming on. This has been Rusty Seabutter.
Jimmy Burrito.
And Mystaes.
And keep on punching, and the punches will come back to you. Thanks, everybody. I just made that up on the spot.